I don't want to do the underwriting. I'm not sure how this works and whether this works, but it would be a pretty good product.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Cards Against Complexity. We're today at FIBE in Berlin, second day, kicked off just by your cookies right now. Our finance minister, current finance minister, we're in the middle of a transformative market in financial services. Many traditional banks here, but also many fintechs. And today I've got with me Aiga from Billie. Hi.
Hi, Jan. Hi, everyone.
And everyone outside, we're looking outside.
Yes.
Everyone on LinkedIn will not know, but there's actually people listening live. They will get every single word. LinkedIn might get some outtakes. Really looking forward to this conversation. And you've got a whole journey behind you since 2016 at Billie, building it from the ground up to where Billie is today. We'll go through all of this in a second. But before we get there, maybe can you briefly introduce yourself and what your role is at Billie, but also what Billie does?
Yes, thank you first, Jan, for inviting me and for the lovely coffee. I am Aiga Senftleben. I'm one of the co-founders at Billie. Actually, I'm a trained lawyer. So, of course, in Billie, I look after the licenses, after compliance, after legal, but also after security and the entire HR department. Billie is a fintech in Berlin, and we optimize, or we help companies optimizing their B2B payments setup. So what we're actually doing is, or the product that you will most likely know is Buy Now, Pay Later for buyers that are businesses, so that the experience that you as a consumer know when you buy online, using maybe PayPal or Klarna, that is an experience that we want to transfer to the business world, so that also when you buy for your company, you have that same experience and the same flexibility.
And I mean, that's one of the things we see at Next Matter. Like, you want anyone going into their business on Monday morning have the same experience as the consumer on the weekend.
Is it?
I think that's some beautiful image to think about, right? Because when I get my coffee that you have right now Monday morning, I want to have that same kind of user and customer experience. Not easy to get there, quite complex to build all of this and go through it. We'll talk about this in a second, but this podcast is called Cards Against Complexity, which means we'll play cards. And I've got them here in front of me, and you'll see them in a second.
Yeah, I've seen them the first time. When I first saw this, I thought it was about credit cards, and I thought credit cards have nothing to do with like erasing complexity, right? If anything,
sometimes the definition of like even getting that card.
Credit card is like, anyway. All right, let's go.
Yeah, so this is not a credit card. It might still like not so much money in there, but probably some fun. So I had a quick peek before. So for everyone who doesn't know this game yet, Cards Against Complexity, similar to Cards Against Humanity. The idea is we've got a card on the left-hand side. Outside we can't see it, inside we can. I'll describe it in a second. It's a sentence that needs completion. The other three cards are three options. They might not be ideal. You still have to choose one. Tell me which one, and we'll see where this takes us. So, Billie launches a flexible payment system for startups. That's great.
Sounds great.
It lets them pay only when they raise their Series A round, pay with the shares of their equity, or postpone all payments until they reach product market fit. It sounds very customer friendly. I like the offerings.
It's very good. I take number 3.
Number 3, that was fast. Why number 3?
Because nobody wants to pay with their equity. It's like the holy grail in having a startup, right? That's what you want to protect at all costs. That's why you actually also take debt in, so that you don't have to pay with your equity. I think paying only when you raise a Series A round is like the exact other way around of being consumer friendly, right?
Yeah.
Or like doing something for your customer, because what you want is giving them flexibility and not saying, look, only when you have a Series A you pay. So definitely we give you the flexibility to only pay when you have a product market fit. I don't want to do the underwriting. I'm not sure how this works and whether this works, but it would be a pretty good product.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, like, how do you even evaluate product market fit and how do you get there?
Exactly, yeah, but that wasn't on the cards.
Yeah, this wasn't on the cards, so we don't have to worry about this complexity, and our customers for sure happy, because if they only have to pay at product market fit, that's quite a journey to get there. And I think that's something that I would love to dive in a bit with you. So, I mean, the journey of building Billie from the early days. Take us a bit through this, and maybe we start like, how do you end up as a lawyer, as a co-founder in a financial services startup out of all places?
These are two questions. Let me start with the Billie bit, because also here we see some transformation going on. In 2016, when we started Billie, it was quite fashionable to have these factoring or invoice financing startups popping up everywhere. I think we were actually only the fourth or fifth that were in the German market. And the idea was that that it would be possible if you, for example, have an agency and you've just redone the website of BMW, then BMW will tell you, look, I'm paying you in 60 days, right? And you have very little bargaining power. So what you want to do with your agency, you upload your invoice in the Billie platform, and we bridge this.
Yeah.
Classic factoring. It was very new because small agencies would never receive these kind of services, right? It was only available from big banks for really large companies. However, we realized it was then actually interesting because one of our customers said, this is a really good product, but can you please move it into the checkout? So in the checkout, buyers can say, I want to pay this a bit later after 30 or 60 or 90 days. And we can still use this factoring skeleton that you have, but we move it into the checkout. We did this and realized, this comes more and more closer to a payment solution that we suddenly have here. And we have the huge benefit that we have some buyer interaction. It's not in my previous example where I'm the agency and I upload the invoice that I have for BMW to pay. BMW doesn't know about this. We can't they also shouldn't be knowing about this. It's a bit like, factoring using this kind of financial services. Isn't that a bit dodgy? But when we're in a checkout, on Billie is an option to pay in the checkout, then this has a buyer interaction, and that gives Billie the possibility to build a lot more technology on this interaction, which then in turn is much more scalable. So we kind of, following our customers' wishes, quite interesting, we transformed this business from a classical modern factoring solution to a payment solution in the checkout. Yeah, this is kind of that transformation that we've seen. My personal transformation was almost a bit similar because I've started like a very classical, I'm a lawyer. I'm a proper solicitor in a big law firm, and I actually even went to court, right? 15 years ago, I was in the court and I had to defend Commerzbank. Not even sure if I'm allowed to say this, but it's probably okay.
We'll check this later. And this would be something that fine. Everyone here hears and everybody else doesn't.
Nobody knows. Nobody will know. And after a few years, I realized I want to go in-house, and I was almost stumbled across PayPal. And it was in hindsight, it was such a lucky move, because fintech, I think, is still such an interesting area, and is also super interesting for lawyers because you're working very closely in developing the product. Yeah. I think in other startups, and it's also a good job, you do M&A, you do the T's and C's, you do, I don't know, the corporate part. But I think in the fintech area, working as a legal counsel, you really have to understand the product, and you have to make risk decisions, and you have to guide how you build products and how you develop it. You have a very fragmented regulatory landscape. So just because one product works in one country doesn't mean necessarily you can just move it even within Europe. And so this is in general annoying, but interesting for lawyers. So, this is what really got me hooked into this. Also, I think PayPal was a great company, in the way that they developed their employees. This was especially interesting for me coming from a huge law firm. I hope it's different now, but at least at the time, law firms were still kind of like, they're lawyers and they're clerks, and you just bill your hours. Yeah. But, actually developing and being interested and finding out really about a lot of things wasn't at least the total focus. And when I started working for PayPal, I really felt I can learn something from every single person that is working here. Yeah. And I thought it was so amazing. Like, what's agile developing? What's affiliate marketing? What's even product? What does HR do? Literally, I came from this ivory tower, of being a lawyer who in the end produces words and documents into a company where I thought, wow, this is amazing. And they have like 5,000 people sitting in Dublin and in other parts that do the risk. And I was fascinated by it, how this works together. And I think paper is also a great product. Not for B2B, only for B2C, but is. And I really enjoyed how you also as a legal person really have to take decisions and make risk evaluations. It's not just preparing this and advising on it. And after a few years, I thought at PayPal, you kind of like only execute on what's decided in San Jose. And the German lawyers always say it doesn't work because of data protection. It's just a joke, right? But it was like a little bit limited in the way what you could do. So I decided I much rather have a bigger role in a smaller team, so I can make this wheel turn, although it's a small wheel. But I didn't feel so much like a tiny little cog in this huge wheel. And then I met my now co-founders, who were at the time at a P2P lending startup, where I then had the legal department. And we were acquired by Funding Circle, which is a UK company, still out there, still market leader in this lending space. And after 2 years, we decided to start Billie. Also, always interesting, fun stories on how mergers develop and what happened. And and there I suddenly was one of the co-founders. So I didn't go to business school and said, at some point I'm going to change the world. But it was more like there were chances that came up. I realized I liked it and I took them.
Really, really cool. Thanks for sharing this journey. And it's like quite inspiring to see like how the transition from lawyer to co-founder in a business happens and can happen. And I think for any lawyer listening to this, there's an opportunity to get away from that paperwork and use papers to build products and actually deliver value. And again, that's a joke. But that's
such a mean joke, Jan. You're not allowed to do it. And
I feel like I can do this. Like I have a small business law background. I know when to call the lawyer. Unfortunately, that's the only thing I know. So maybe I'm not allowed to, but I'll still do it. On the mic. So then there's been this journey, and you're now in Billie, right? It's 2016. You're building Billie all the way to today. In the beginning, factoring, now a payment solution. You're focusing a lot on, you said this earlier already, on customer experience. Why do customers choose you in the end? Because I mean, there's so many payment options, so many, even if I walk around here, so many ways that I could get transactions done, even in B2B, B2C for sure, but even in B2B. Why do your customers choose Billie, and how do you get there?
Yeah, I mean, there's two types of customers. And let's first look at the merchants who are our customers. So if I say merchants, I mean is somebody who has a big e-commerce shop and they sell, I don't know, DIY stuff. That person really is focused on having a really, really good acceptance rate and a very smooth payments system. Ooh.
That's music also. We're on the live conference, live recording. That's why
background noise. So that is what people are really interested in. And because if you are a merchant and you have converted somebody to go to your website, put, I don't know, some kind of product into the basket case, and you are checking out, you don't want this to fail at this point. It's just way too expensive and it's a huge loss. And here we have to see what kind of payment solutions are out there. And Billie offers a payment solution that is really targeted as businesses buying for you. And as I already said, everybody probably knows and uses PayPal and Klarna when you buy privately. But if you want to buy, for example, 5 laptops or 10 iPhones, then you cannot use these payment solutions. And for a very good reason, because private people unlikely to need 5 iPhones, right? This is like the immediately alarm, the red alert, iPhones in the basket won't work. But so the way that the buyer interacts with the merchant, with our customer here, is different if they are buying for a company or if they buy it privately. And it makes a lot of sense for the for the merchants to have a solution that can give them higher limits, that knows how to score them, that understands the fraud pattern. And hence, that's why they choose Billie, because they realize they have higher acceptance rates, which is ultimately what's really important for them. So, and also, I mean, also about their own efficiency. There are a lot of our customers or these merchants that had built their own in-house solutions. And that's just something that will never be as good in fraud detection and using all of the sources that we use in order to identify and fraud detect. So not only do we want high acceptance rate, but we also want to have really little fraud. Yeah. And I think these two are the reasons why merchants come to us. Why do buyers come to us? I mean, paying on invoice is just the safest way to pay. You receive the goods and then you pay, right? That's always been super popular, especially in the DACH region, where people are always a bit like, really? I don't want to pay before I have received the goods. So, it's certainly the most convenient way to pay. And especially if you can choose kind of your payment terms, you also have a bit flexibility with your liquidity management.
Yeah. Cool. And that's like a two-sided value proposition, really.
Yeah.
Took some time to build it. Now,
yes.
You've been in this journey with your team for 8 years and counting. What have been like the biggest learnings on that journey for you?
I think sometimes there's so many learnings, and then I still have to zoom out a little bit to think about this. I think certainly, I mean, it was a huge learning about this pivot that we had from the factoring to the payment solution. I think also how you can sometimes just follow the customers and realize, this is really good, and how it trickles down to building this as a byproduct, and then realizing this is a much more interesting and scalable product. I think this was really great to see. And other than this, I think we learn, but also when we look at like how Klarna started, how it's just it's serious hard work. B2B is long cycles. It's really fun. We work with really large merchants that entrust us with their payments, which is a very core capacity. So it's just continuous work, popping features, adding new countries. All of these things are very relevant, and having the right team that has this like endurance and motivation to keep this going.
Yeah, very cool. And I think we hear this all the time. B2B journeys are longer journeys, but it's in the end fulfilling because really it's addressing a huge needs, making a huge change for customers. Now, if you can give advice to your younger self, it doesn't have to be a lawyer, maybe take a lawyer, but somebody joining a startup journey after being really in like more the corporate world, what do you think is like you would tell yourself 10 years ago what to focus on or what to bring in so that you can succeed?
Listen to the customer, understand the customer's needs, because B2B products, I think, are less around having a fancy brand. I mean, you also need this at some point, but nobody will buy you just for this brand. Yeah. But really understand the customers, what they need, how their current systems are, why you want to disrupt and transform this. I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, we probably could have maybe been a little bit faster in like swapping, right? Or maybe we did it just right, but we did follow the customers in a way. And I think was very, very relevant and good to do.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you so much for sharing this. And in the end, going back to your good old lawyer days, now bringing next to paper also products out there. An inspiration probably for anyone who wants to do more with their law career. There's an option to build a product, especially in financial services and fintechs. We've got fintech founders listening to this. Maybe get a lawyer on board as your co-founder in the very beginning. Probably very helpful. Your team will probably say the same. And for any merchant or buyer out there, there's alternative ways to pay and buy. So thank you so much for joining us here.
Thank you, Jan.
Really enjoyed the conversation.
Me too.